it can be hard to say no to people.
No.
No.
One of our first words as like a toddler is no. As we get older, we lose our confidence in being able to say no.
I had to learn to say no more often than not in order to allow myself the downtime. Thus, for I choose the right time and place to say yes. And welcome to Love Always Self. I'm Shira.
Hi, y'all. I'm Karista, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Love Always Self.
Hi. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Always glad to have you.
Yes.
Shy Bear, how are you today?
I'm doing really good today.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel productive.
Okay.
I feel productive, energetic. I'm excited because tomorrow I'm taking a course at Precision Camera. They offer these courses. If you're here locally in Austin, Precision Camera, and I think they have multiple locations, but the one on Anderson, they offer courses, and I'm going to that tomorrow, and I'm pretty pumped. It's all day, and I get to nerd out on camera gear and audio and lighting for an entire day, and I'm pumped about it.
Wow. From 8 a.m. to like in the
5 p.m.
Whoa. That's a
know.
long time. That's a long class.
That's a lot of like me just having like an absolute good time.
Well, I hope that when you wake up in the morning, since you are absolutely a morning person,
Not at all. Let's just be clear.
that
No.
the excitement of the class just helps you rise out of bed.
And the coffee. And the coffee. Bad habit, by the way. But
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I drink very good coffee. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, like if it was in excess, like more than 1 or 2 cups a day, like I feel like then that becomes a bad habit.
well, I think it's like the fact that I probably enjoy like the creamer and and that more than the coffee itself. It's the blend.
I
It's
mean,
the blend.
I definitely put in maple syrup in my coffee every morning. So
Okay, I have not tried that.
yes, just a little bit, just to coat the bottom of the cup.
I have a new idea. That's fantastic.
Delicious.
How about you? How are you?
I am doing pretty good today.
Yeah.
Especially now that I'm here with you.
Yay.
Like the beginning of the day was a little quiet and like subdued and just like, I don't know, it felt like time was going by really slow. But now that I'm here, like I feel like super pumped and energized and happy and excited. And yeah, just it's a good day to be recording. So
It is a good day to be recording, and we're excited to jump into a topic that can sometimes feel a little rough. And no.
to give you a hint.
So, I know personally speaking, it can be hard to say no to people. Mm-hmm. It can be hard to say no to being asked to do something or to join in on a really good time or to say no to yourself. Like there's a lot in that category that can be tough to do.
Isn't that interesting? Because one of our first words as like a toddler is no.
Most often.
And we, as little children, practice saying that so often. But as we get older, we lose our confidence, I think, in being able to say no.
Well, and that was one of the things is that a lot of times we have, as we get older especially, and the older we get especially, you have all the history behind you, all the experiences.
And I'd even say more responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so sometimes to say no to things, as an example, to be productively giving you advice here, as an example, I know that I have grown a much better ability to say no to things. I do get asked to go do things quite a bit. I used to have a very social life. And so because of that, people that have known me over the years are very accustomed to me being a very socialite individual. And so I get invited to things, and I had to learn to say no more often than not in order to allow myself the downtime that was required of me to be productive in other areas of my life besides the social aspect. And I'm not saying that the social aspect is not important, because it definitely is. And so thus for, I choose the right time and place to say yes. But it took, the FOMO, the fear of missing out, that little acronym, man. It was difficult. And so I would find myself saying yes all the time and doing things, and then burning the candle at both ends of the stick and reaching that center point like more often than not. So I had to learn to say no.
I find my area of weakness is generally with the people that I am closest with, like my spouse, my parents, and what drives that is this fear of disappointing or letting down, or even there's like a level of, I think, misplaced guilt as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
So I don't know, like I don't want to give any specific examples, just because I don't want to like rock the boat too much.
We know you're listening. That makes total sense. I mean, I think that for me, I was trying to create a character, and that character no longer fits who I am now.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so the version of me that would say yes all the time did that to maintain the character that I was trying to personify to others, which was always up for anything, outgoing, socialite, knew everybody. And it was important to me to know everybody because I needed to be heard and seen. But that required a lot of self-awareness, a lot of retrospect.
Isn't it interesting, like these ideas of self-preservation that are connected to the reasons why we don't say no?
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And honestly, for both of us, there's this level of acceptance that we were afraid of losing.
Right. And I also think that, part of the culture that we're in more often today is very socially, but in an electronic format, to be seen and to be heard. And so if you are already somebody that's like having a hard time finding or figuring out who you want to be or how you want to be, and you think that there's an expectation that you have to be a certain way, then usually you'll try to find something somewhat in the like-minded field of who you are. And then you go out and you search for that. And then it's reflected back to you in a reel or a social media scroll, and you try to re-personify who that is. But if you have any type of discourse between what you're doing, then you're going to find yourself in a position that maybe you don't end up liking who you are. And then now you feel like you've set this like new standard of self and this new persona to everyone else. And
now you have to keep pretending to be the mask that you're wearing.
Right. And then saying no to those things or deciding to make the change can feel overwhelming. You'll feel like you're going to lose a connection that you had before versus just deciding to create new, even if you're starting from scratch.
Right.
Which can be scary. That can be very scary.
I know one thing that for me is like a barrier or maybe a speed bump to get over is I am so afraid of being like coming across as a bitch. and there's so many times where I like practice this in my head, or even sometimes out loud in the bathroom where I will practice like this tone of voice. And no matter how many times I practice, I feel like when I actually do it,
the delivery
and implement it, the delivery is like skewed from my goal.
I can relate to that.
And I think that there's a level of like caring a little bit less, not putting it totally in the fuck it bucket, but caring just a little bit less.
Absolutely.
Like knowing that you're putting the effort towards not being an asshole, you know, and trying to be kind in that delivery of a no,
Right.
or setting that boundary, and allowing yourself to do it, because I know for me that will prevent me from actually saying no.
And I think that also speaks to the level of understanding the relationships that you're in, getting to know the individuals that you're asking to do things for you. Because if they do say no and they are trying, and you can help perceive that just a little bit, like drop your need of them saying yes a little bit enough to understand why somebody has said no. I also think that's just as important. So if I ask somebody, "Hey, you want to go to dinner?" and they say, "No, I can't do that today," then I too need to be understanding
And flexible.
and flexible, right? Like that is important. And
Because we're not narcissistic and expecting
No.
everybody to, like, the whole world revolves around me.
Right.
In fact, like, I feel like that's kind of like the opposite, is we're so not connected to that side of things that we almost make our world sometimes revolve around those other people.
Yeah. And sometimes the level of guilt that we have, although we can attest to that being something based on our past and historical situations or things that we've learned or being told that you had to be a certain way. Sure, we can connect all of that, what we feel is like some kind of guilt or shame to say, to set a boundary, to be honest, you know, because normally when you're saying no, regardless of what type of boundary it is, you're setting that just for that, even if it's for a short period of time, right? And I do think that because of this, there needs to be a little bit more of a norm, you know, like a societal norm that no can be okay.
Oh,
Now,
that'd be nice.
yeah. I mean, I have to say this just because it's coming up in my head and I'm just like, Now, if you are employed by somebody to do a job and they're paying you to do the job,
That's different than what we're talking about.
and you've contracted yourself to do a certain job, you know, a legal one, then maybe telling the person that just paid you to do said job, no, I'm not doing that job. That might be harder, you know. That's a different.
You might lose that job.
You might lose that job, you know. Might not receive that payment. So brace yourself if you go that way.
So this is more in like our personal lives, not necessarily our
right.
business lives. Not to say that there aren't times and places where we do need to say no, because when it does come to the professional arena, sometimes we do take on more than what, you know, it overflows off of our plate. So we do need to practice saying, I can't take that on right now.
Yeah. And
can you delegate it to somebody else? And there's a way to say that rather than just no.
Yeah.
No.
And in the professional world, we like to call that scope creep.
I've never heard that term before.
So yeah, in my consulting days, that's what we would call that. If you write out the description of the work that you will be performing for, you know, the service, and then the customer would come and start asking for more additional things, but keep it within the same pay parameters that they had already previously set, that's considered scope creep. So it's adding additional work.
Asking for you to do more outside of the scope of the job description that's already been signed and contracted.
Right. So there's definitely, in the professional world, there's definitely like a level of expectation to have some form of flexibility. You know, times do change, things do change. We see this now in the technological world that we're in. So there might have to be some fluidity to that, but to just continue adding and adding and adding is still a little different.
To be expected to burn the candle at both ends for your job. That's I don't know. Some people would be like, yeah, I'll do that. That's fine. And that is a mindset that is individual.
Yeah.
Because that shouldn't be expected of everybody.
Exactly. I agree. I 100% agree. So what are some of the things that we can do as individuals to practice saying no and feeling more confident in doing that?
You know, I touched on one earlier, but even just practicing with yourself, like saying it out loud and So I've done this before where I've received a text message asking me to do something. And so I will practice actually stating the no out loud. And because that person isn't around me, I feel safe and comfortable. And so I can sit there and think about like, no, I'm not in aligned with that. Or, not everybody needs a reason why, but I generally feel like I need to provide a reason. That's just me. Again, that guilt and shame.
The deep-rooted guilt and shame. Damn that.
I just want to be there for everybody.
It is hard. It is hard. But we talk about that. We talk about that here on this podcast. Like, you can only provide when your cup is full yourself, right? So, I mean, you can't fill up other people's cups if yours is empty.
It's like the airplane thing. If you don't put on your oxygen mask first, you can't help the other people next to you put on the oxygen mask because you are passed out from lack of oxygen.
It's very descriptive. And I love it. It's working for me.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to go and touch back on the practicing saying no. One of the things that, going back to the use of phones and the use of technology, we have so many ways to be in contact with each other now. I mean, you've got email, you've got chat, you've got text, you have social media. You mail still exists, y'all.
Snail mail.
Snail mail.
The U.S. Postal Service.
That one. But because there are so many ways to reach out, I do feel like there's a level of expectation for you to respond and do it quickly, which that one is probably been one of my harder boundaries that I've had to set. And I've had to learn to be okay with not being the quickest responder. Say I'm at work and, friends and family are reaching out or whatever. I have to put that aside so I can focus on the task at hand that I am being paid to do. So, I mean, granted, I do, depending on who's reaching out, I make sure it's not an emergency, right? But, I mean, our technology just sits on us 24/7 and we're reachable 24/7. And so I think sometimes people take advantage of that.
I'm not.
No, she's actually really good about this. Like, out of everybody I know, you're like the best at this. And it's like, I'll send her a text. I'll be like, I'll hear from her in 2 days.
I will say that is something, one of my strong skill sets. If I feel overwhelmed by a text and I don't feel like, I can give a solid response right then I will actually set my phone down. And
that's good.
Because I get these heightened emotions and I know that I'm going to say things in response in a way that's not what I'm trying to get across. Right. So I am miscommunicating at that point. And so I know that I need to kind of like, hold on, like, let me think about this. Let me see if it's feasible. And, before I get all up in arms about somebody asking me to do one more thing, let me just, breathe it out for a second. And I will wait, until I feel like I have a good response. And that could be a couple minutes. It could be a couple hours. It could be the next day.
Well, and that speaks to if you didn't get to know yourself enough to understand how you would respond to things, right? Then you would suffer the consequences of
and I have
of the rapid response when not ready.
Because then you have to like backtrack and backstep and explain what you mean, and then like work the energy down a little bit from a place of like anger and defense, from both parties.
Which is so crazy because like if you think about it, all that right there on top of what happens to your physical body when you're in that emotional state, right?
Yeah, that stress state. Absolutely.
Yep, the stress state, all the things that we talk about on how to like prioritize self and take care of self goes completely out the window when you start acting on behalf of the word yes 24/7. So yeah, it is important to work through your own personal abilities in saying no. Another helpful tip, feeling confident in your own personal reasons why. And I'll explain that. If I have been asked to do something that I don't feel in alignment with, whether that's because I'm not emotionally present for that at the moment, Or maybe it's asking something that I feel is kind of crossing a boundary to me. I like to take the stance of right now in my place in life, I am confident enough in understanding my no, right? So if you understand why you don't want to do something or why you want to say no to somebody in the first place, then hold true to that and stand firm in your ability that this is your life. This is your opportunity to do what it is that you want to do and not feel like you're a selfish individual or that, all the reasons need to be explained because it actually doesn't. It is your personal response. It is your personal needs. It is your personal care. And there could be a million things going on in your life that would result into a no. And not everybody has to know that. But if you feel like explaining it, that's also okay. And the people that you're talking to should be willing to listen or be willing to accept that. And if they're not, well, you have decisions. You're not trapped in that.
You hit on a word that I was just thinking about is like the idea that saying no is selfish.
Yeah. And it's not. It's not selfish. And it's self-preservation.
So for example, like I'm not going to give a lot of details, but I was asked to help with a task in the evening this week. And that meant that I would have to not go to the gym, that I would not be able to start making dinner at a reasonable time that works best for me and my body, because I don't like to eat late because I go to bed fairly early. And so I like to be done with dinner and give my body an hour or two, maybe 3 to digest before I go to bed. And so that would have compromised all of those things, thus affecting my ability to sleep, have good rest, and be up and energized and cognizant for my nursing role the next day.
Right.
And so I still had a level of guilt saying no, but it was more because I felt like I've built this expectation that I will be willing to help anybody and everybody. And so going back to what you said about, feeling like you have to continue to be the mask that you have presented in the first place, and being okay with maybe taking that off or adjusting that mask and slowly, stepping into your self-empowerment of who you are authentically.
Right. And again, I want to make sure that I express this. It can be fluid. You are, let's say you say no to going and having a girls' night, guys' night, whatever. And that was 4 days ago when you said no, because at the time and place that you were at, that's where you were, right? Again, you don't have to have a specific reason. But then come the night of the event, you want to change your mind because maybe that day you're feeling better. It's okay to then say yes, right? So that's what I'm saying. It can be very fluid,
Right.
but if you have a boundary of, I need to be able to make dinner around this time, because that's a task, right? And sometimes those are not very short ones, especially if you're eating healthy, darn it. And so, and you need to be able to get a good night's sleep so you can do your job the next day. Those are all extremely valid self-care reasons.
Because trust me, you don't want a tired nurse like poking you with a needle.
I've had it happen. It is really awful.
So in that regard, I am also doing it for all of my patients. And it's not selfish.
It's not selfish. Again, it's self-preservation of your job.
Yeah, and myself.
And yourself.
Yeah, my well-being, so that I can continue to support other people's well-being, circling back to oxygen mask on the airplane. Lots of circles today.
It's all a loop. We've determined. It just keeps coming and going. And some of the challenges of saying yes and saying no, right?
Of living life.
Right. And from the no to the yes, and it can go the other direction. You can start off with oh my God, I would love to do that tomorrow.
Right.
And then tomorrow comes and you're like, shit has hit the fan. I no longer want to do that.
Yeah.
Then you can change your mind.
And you know what? There's also that middle ground of, maybe, or let me think on it and I'll get back to you.
Right. Yep. That's exactly right. Get back to the person, though. If you do say maybe, I'm going to get back to you. Just let them know.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's
Communication is nice, guys.
Communication's great. Oh my goodness. I hope that this has been helpful.
No.
Say yes to that one, okay?
Speaking of saying yes.
Wait, I'm not ready. See, I'm not ready. No, Carrie. Oh my God. Speaking of saying yes, hit yes on that like notification bell.
Ding,
Subscribe. We know you're listening, so subscribe. And we are also on social platforms like
TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube Shorts.
there you go. So glad you remembered them all. Guess what, guys?
We also have a website.
Ding.
It's at lovealwaysself.com.
I figured it was easier to do the Vanna White thing instead of adding the little note in editing. Why not? Oh my gosh. Well, we hope that, again, today has been productive of a conversation for you guys to listen to. We hope that you help set up those boundaries, stick to your nose, stick to your
nose.
nose.
Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself.
Yes.
My goodness, Shira.
We love you so much. And don't forget to love first
love last.
and love always.
Oh my gosh. Bye,
Bye, y'all.
everybody.
Hey, listener, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us in this moment. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to our next connection.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow to stay notified of new content from Love Always Self. If you have any questions or topics you'd like for us to discuss, please hit us up on any of our social media platforms linked in the show notes below.
I'm Karista.
And I'm Shira.
And until next time, remember to love first
Love last.
and love always. Love Always Self podcast is meant for entertainment purposes only. We do not make any warranties about the completeness, reliability, and accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. Any action you choose to take upon the information in this podcast is strictly done so at your own risk, and we will not be held liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of our podcast. Any and all medical concerns should be addressed with a licensed healthcare provider, as well as any questions that may be derived from the information discussed in this podcast.